Okay, now we're continuing with this book, The Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes by me, Pete Rogers. We're on the letter B. We're at the level of Paul Bunyan. He lived from 1628 to 1688. He's the guy who wrote Pilgrim's Progress, very religious book. And here he goes with his quotes. You have not lived today until you have done something for someone who can never repay you. If my life is fruitless, it doesn't matter who praises me. If my life is fruitful, then it doesn't matter who criticizes me. Okay, now this is one of the reasons why tyrants hate Christians. Because a Christian's loyalty is to God. It is to what is right, okay? And this comes up, it's highly relevant. If you look back to, France in the 1790s, Robespierre, the big jerk, Robespierre insisted that everybody make an oath sort of loyal to him and have him at the top, if you will, okay? And, of course, the priests and the nuns refused to do that. So Robespierre had them bumped off, okay, with the guillotine. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is a tyrant always wants the people to give loyalty to them. They want to say, they want atheism so that they can say they are the equivalent of a God on earth and whatever they say goes. So they don't like Christians because the Christians always have their highest authority is God, okay, not some, contemporary ruler for the moment, all right? And so that's why they're not liked by those types, because they're not that easy to control. Okay, look at this guy, John Bunyan. Next he says, in all your prayers, forget not to thank the Lord for his mercies. There's the attitude of gratitude from the 1600s. John Bunyan, what God says is best. What God says is best, though all the men in the world are against it. Okay, and so that has echoes of St. Augustine. St. Augustine had said, right is right, even if wrong is wrong, even if everyone is doing it. Right is right, even if no one is doing it. Okay, and that's the proper mind for a Christian. And that's what's so great about Christians. They will do what is right, regardless of peer pressure or other things. Okay, and that's one of the reasons why I think my mother is the greatest woman I ever met in my life, because she always did what was right, no matter how unpopular it was to the people around her. And she did a lot of good things. Okay, the next one is Anthony Burgess. He's an author, an English guy. And here's his quotes. He lived from 1917 to 1993. To be left alone is the most precious thing one can ask for in the modern world. Every grain of experience is food for the growing soul of the artist. Yeah, I think that's part of it. If you want to someday become an artist, you should be paying attention to things. You should be, trying to understand things. You should get yourself in the habit of writing in whatever manner, just so you're in the habit of doing it. Writing is it's a skill that you build up with time. And one of the nice things about writing is you keep on getting better at it as you get older. I used to play sports when I was young in college and everything. And unfortunately, you start getting a little bit weaker after, I'd say, about 35 years of age. So you just slowly get a little weaker. Okay, don't get me wrong, I'm pretty strong for an old guy. But what I'm saying is, with writing, you just keep getting better and better. So that's nice. With wisdom, you get better and better. You can judge more effectively because you've got a lot of experience. Okay, Anthony Burgess continues. There is in fact not much point in writing a novel unless you can show the possibility of moral transformation or an increase in wisdom operating in your chief character or characters. Okay? When asked who is the ideal reader for his books, he says, the ideal reader of my novels is a lapsed Catholic and a failed musician, short-sighted, colorblind, auditorily biased, who has read the books that I have read and who is also about my age. So he himself is the best reader. Okay, he continues, God made man free to choose good or evil, and that is an astounding gift. All right. Okay, our next person and the last one for this series of quotes is Edmund Burke, the great Edmund Burke. In real life, he was a very impressive guy, and he's an Irishman, okay? So I always laugh when people try to say, oh, Edmund Burke, the conservative. You know what? The guy's a freaking Irish guy. The Irish were, basically the slaves to the British, and this guy had the brains, the guts, the balls to go and be a member of Parliament in England, okay, in difficult times when the Irish were heavily oppressed. Okay, so he was famous for a lot of things. Famous for being brilliant. He was famous for making accurate predictions about what happened in France during the 1780s and 1790s. Okay, he was not enthusiastic about the French disaster and the fall of the Bastille and everything that went with that. Okay? Okay. Here's a quote by Samuel Johnson. You could not stand 5 minutes with that man, Edmund Burke, beneath a shed while it rained, but be convinced that you were standing with the greatest man you had ever seen. Okay? Edmund Burke. Rudeness is the weak man's imitation of strength. Yeah, that's why to be rude and vulgar is usually a sign of being low class, a low class, low efficient person, somebody to be avoided. Burke continues. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. It is enough for evil to triumph if good men do nothing. Nobody made a greater mistake than he who did nothing because he could only do a little. Those who do not learn from history are destined to repeat it. Okay, we're continuing with Edmund Burke, the Irishman. People will not look forward to posterity who do not look backward to their ancestors. Yeah, that's an important point. You know, how can you build upon the achievements of the past if you don't even know what they are? I personally think all the grade schools and high schools should spend extensive amounts of time studying the ancient Greeks and Romans. I can tell you, I've studied extensively ancient history. There's nothing like the ancient Greeks. The ancient Greeks were just this massive peak of incredible achievement. Percy Bysshe Shelley, the sort of the crazy romantic poet of England, from around 1800, he said the most interesting, greatest time ever in the history of mankind was the ancient Greeks of Athens, let's say from about 500 BC to about, let's say 350 BC. It was incredible. There were so many geniuses in Athens, and they were so interesting. Okay, and also you learn from the ancient Romans. You learn something different from the ancient Greeks. A lot of good stuff. From the ancient Romans, you learn a lot of bad stuff. Sort of like don't get me wrong, there were some good things about the ancient Romans too, but the ancient Romans sort of crystallized a lot of things you don't want. Okay, the Republic did last, the ancient Roman Republic, over 500 years. And if you include it with the empire and the monarchy, quite a lot longer than that. Anyways, Edmund Burke continues. The age of chivalry has gone. That of sophisters, economists, and calculators has succeeded, and the glory of Europe is extinguished forever. Okay. A lot of people saw the disaster in France in the 1790s as a major drop in civilization. And that was followed by Napoleon. And Napoleon, he was a heroic guy in some ways, but he's also a crazy tyrant in other ways. Okay? Edmund Burke continues. The people never give up their liberties, but under some delusion. Yeah, they're routinely tricked out of them. That's why they got to, be aware of them and try to protect them. Okay. This barbarous philosophy, which is the offspring of cold hearts and muddy understandings. Man is by his design a religious animal. Atheism is not only against our reason, but against our instincts. Yeah, you're not going to have a successful society. It's religion that ties the people together. Religion comes from the Latin word legare, to ligate, to tie together. Religion ties the people together. Think about what you get from the Bible and Christianity. You get all the stories of mankind, the wisdom accumulated from all of that. A shared dialogue that you can communicate effectively with each other through idioms. A shared bonanza of music, of rules to be nice to each other, to forgive each other, to be good to each other. That which you do to the least of my brethren, you do unto me. That's, individuality and freedom right there. Okay, Edmund Burke continues. Learning will be cast into the mire and trodden down under the hoofs of a swinish multitude. He that wrestles with us strengthens our nerves and sharpens our skill. Our antagonist is our helper. Old religious factions are like volcanoes burnt out. Okay, Edmund Burke continues. Despots rule by force. They know that he who fears God fears nothing else. Okay, so that's another reason why they hate Christians. Because their boss is God. Okay, so they don't care as much about the ruler. They're not going to pledge an oath of allegiance to only some, secular ruler. They know who their boss is. They know who the King of Kings is, okay? And that emboldens them, okay? Despots rule by force. They know that he who fears God fears nothing else. Therefore, they try to eradicate God from his mind through their Voltaire. And so that's one problem I had with Voltaire in France. Voltaire was a clever guy, and Voltaire did do some good things. I will give him credit for that. But Voltaire also kind of ushered in the craziness of what happened in France in the 1790s. Not good. Okay, so yeah, Voltaire was funny and clever, and he did some good things, but Voltaire was a disaster. Voltaire and Diderot and the philosophes, all their nonsense, along with Rousseau, that's what led to Robespierre. Okay, because without God, you lose your moral foundation, your anchor. Okay, Edmund Burke continues. There is no safety for honest men except by believing all possible evil of evil men. Okay, it's kind of like the 1700s version of just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you. There is no safety for honest men except by believing all possible evil of evil men. When bad men combine, the good must associate, else they will fall one by one, an unpitied sacrifice in a contemptible struggle. When bad men combine, the good must associate, else they will fall one by one, an unpitied sacrifice in a contemptible struggle. Early and provident fear is the mother of safety. The concessions of the weak are the concessions of fear. It is the nature of all greatness not to be exact. Facts are to the mind what food is to the body. The wisest in counsel, the ablest in debate, and the most agreeable companion in the commerce of human life is that man who has assimilated to this understanding the greatest number of facts. Show me one absurdity in religion, and I will show you 100 in political laws and institutions. Okay, now that's a good one there too, because people sometimes tell me, why do you bring religion into talks about medicine and science? And I'm going to say, because you have to. Because if you don't, you end up with nonsense, okay? And we've gone through that before, so I won't go into it now, but there is a reason for it. They go together. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, if you actually look closely at some of this evolutionary biology, like I said, I studied it in college, I majored in it, you'll see there's giant problems with it. Okay, Edmund Burke. True religion is the foundation of society. When that foundation is shaken by contempt, the whole fabric cannot be stable or lasting. So you need to have a religion. You're either going to have Christianity or a Bible-based religion worldview, or you're going to have atheistic Darwinism. There's all these other religions, but they're not numerous enough, the people in them, to make them a significant player. So that's why in the Western societies, it's always teetering between either some form of Christianity or atheistic Darwinism. And atheistic Darwinism is just, the highway to Hell. Okay, Edmund Burke continues. Among a people generally corrupt, liberty cannot long exist. Yeah, you need something to unify the people. Otherwise, they turn into factions and they all end up making a big fuss over stupid stuff. I can remember when I was growing up, we used to say e pluribus unum, out of many one. We all go into the melting pot, so to speak, and become Americans. Like Teddy Roosevelt said, there are no hyphenated Americans. Okay, we're all Americans. That the country was better. The 1980s was, I think, the best decade that I've ever seen. Okay, Edmund Burke continues. It is a general popular error to imagine the loudest complainers for the public to be the most anxious for its welfare. Example is the school of mankind, and they will learn at no other. No passion so effectively robs the mind of all its powers of acting and reasoning as fear. So anyways, that was Edmund Burke, and he's obviously a brilliant guy, and people act like, he's some rough and tough conservative. He's a poor freaking Irish guy trying to survive in England, and England controlling his poor country, Ireland. Okay. So anyways, I hope that was helpful or interesting.